Hi everyone, this is Miss Rowe. I'm hoping you guys recognize me, but if not, I'm one of the phys ed teachers at JH Bruns. And you might be in class with Mr. Smith or Mr. Dewick or Mr. Funk, but today I'm going to be running the class. So today's lesson is going to be on body image and the media. And your teacher will have shared a document with you either through OneNote or Teams or however your teacher is specifically sharing your assignments during remote learning. But this is a document that has a link to a couple of videos for you to watch and then respond to. So the links will have about 1 minute videos. The last one is about 3 minutes, and then some questions for you to respond to on the right. But before you go ahead and watch those videos, there's a couple of questions at the top of the page that I would like you to take some time to answer. They are more rhetorical questions, so you don't need to type out your answers to those first 4 questions, but instead take some time to reflect and think about those questions. So the first question that I would like you to think about or take some time to reflect on is, have you had any thoughts about your appearance today? So have you had any negative thoughts, positive thoughts? Have you had any thoughts about yourself at all today? So take a couple of seconds here or a few moments and think about what you have thought about yourself today. Okay, so once you've had a chance to take that time to think about those thoughts, I want you to now think about some thoughts that you've had about other people. It's a little bit more difficult now. We're obviously not in school and seeing each other and being face to face with our friends or our peers or people that we might see on a regular basis. So how you see other people right now could totally look different from our norm. So it might be through group chats or different types of social media. It could be through FaceTiming. It could be people that you see on TV or on movies that you're watching. So take this time to think about any thoughts, again, positive or negative, that you may have had about other people today. All right, if you need a little bit more time, then just pause the video at any moment and, take a little bit more time to reflect on some of these questions. But we're going to move on. So now I want you to think about your thoughts based on those 2 questions. So did your responses or your thoughts that you thought about yourself differ from the thoughts that you thought about other people? And if so, how did they differ? Were you maybe a little bit more quick to point out some negative thoughts about yourself versus other people? Or was that the reverse? Were you quicker to pick out maybe negative thoughts about other people versus yourself? Or maybe you had positive thoughts about both yourself and everybody else, which is great. That's the goal. That's what we want. We want to be kind to not only others, but also to ourselves. But that's not always the case, right? Everybody has good days and bad days. And it's really important that we work on making sure that our mindset, that our thought process is mostly positive. So if you had negative thoughts about other people, really I'm challenging you to think about why. Why are we judging other people based on what they're wearing, what they look like, what their skin is like, what their hair is like, what shirt they have on. Really think about why you are having those thoughts. But I find when I do this lesson in class that the feedback that I get from the students when I ask these questions and kids are willing to share, most of them will say that the thoughts that they had about themselves were much more negative than the thoughts that they had about other people. And that's really what the videos number 3 and number 4 speak to, right? Is about the fact that we are our own worst enemy, our harshest critics, that we are quick to point out the negatives in ourselves versus picking out negatives in people we see or, the friends that we have or people that we see on social media or in movies or in TV or whatever it might be. And that can be really challenging, right? That can be really tough and really weigh down on our psyche quite a bit. So the challenge today is to really start to change that mindset. If you're having those negative thoughts about yourself or about, your hair, your looks, your clothes, whatever it might be, really try and focus on changing that mindset. And for some people, that might be really difficult, and it takes work and it takes practice. And not everybody feels perfect about themselves every day, but the goal is to try and learn to accept ourselves for who we are and be much more positive about ourselves than negative about ourselves. So once you have a chance to go and watch those videos, I'd like you to respond to how the videos made you feel and the questions that are on the right that you can go ahead and do. When you are done watching the videos, there's a couple more questions at the bottom for some self-reflection on how, this time that we're living in and how maybe that has changed our perceptions. You, like I mentioned earlier, are not coming to school every day. You're not seeing your friends at the same regularity in the same social situations that you were 2 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago. And how has that affected things, right? You're probably online a lot more, not just for school, but you're probably on social media a lot more, like I said, watching videos, watching movies, whatever that might be. So has that really changed or influenced any of those thoughts that you had? If I had asked you those initial questions 6 months ago, would they have been different because you were seeing people more face-to-face versus online, right? We know that we live in a society that is obsessed, for lack of a better word, on social or on appearances, but we also know that a lot of what we see on social media, movies, TV, as these videos that we've shared kind of indicate, are Photoshop. There's filters. That's not realistic. Yet we feel like we need to compare ourselves to these ideals, right? And we feel like trying to portray that perfect life on social media, the perfect look on social media, can really affect our stress levels, right? And our sense of well-being based on what we're seeing, even if we know that it's not necessarily real and that those pictures that we're seeing have filters on them or have been photoshopped, right? When we're constantly bombarded with those images, we can't help but feel like that need to kind of compare ourselves to that image, to that lifestyle, to whatever it might be that you're watching. So the challenge is to really focus on what you are seeing and be aware of, not really comparing ourselves to unrealistic ideals. So that's what those last two questions are a reflection of. And then at the very bottom, there's an article that I linked to a CBC news story that I read about, because as I was getting ready for this lesson, a story broke this past week that really ties into kind of what we're talking about. You probably heard about it. It's about the hockey players group chat that was leaked online. And so I thought it was kind of topical and obviously relevant. Definitely Winnipeggers were involved in the group chat, and people that they were talking about. So I linked the article in case you weren't aware of the story. But what I kind of have taken away from this whole story is that, it was awful what these guys said. And, the group chat was terrible, and they were demeaning to women and body shaming and disrespectful to their teammates. But what I've taken away from this story is that as much as that's our biggest fear of being judged and other people commenting or thinking negative things about us, the response to this story has been overwhelmingly negative towards the people in the group chat. Discounting everything that they said, saying how reprehensible it is to not just think that way, but to actually make comments in a group chat that way. So much so to the fact that at least 2 of those players have been released from their teams because it's behavior unbecoming to what that organization represents. And one of the really positive things that's come out of this story is that some of the women who were degraded in that story or in that group chat and body shamed have come out and gone public with, some really positive messages about how their self-worth isn't tied to those comments. And as though there were many negative comments about them, there were thousands of positive comments about them. But regardless, their self-worth isn't attached to both either those negative or those positive comments, right? Being true to who you are and being happy with yourself is really truly what matters. And it might sound cheesy and it might sound corny, really, but what we feel about ourselves is more powerful than what other people can think about us. And true beauty really does come from within. People that you love, people that care about you, aren't your friends because of the way you look or the shirts that you wear or the style of your hair. They are friends with you because of how important you are to them, because of how you make them feel, the kind of friendship and support that you give them, the personality that you have. So whenever you're having a bad day or feeling down, think about that. I always end this lesson when I'm teaching face-to-face in a classroom is I challenge the class to 2 things to end off. So the first one is I challenge you to think about 3 positive things about yourself. It can be anything, but I want you to think about 3 positive things that you are happy with yourself about. Some of you might be able to list those 3 things, no problem, right off the bat. That is great. Some of you might have a little bit more difficulty, and that's okay. That just means that we need a little bit more practice at it, that it's a little bit more of a challenge for us. And like anything, some things need practice to get better at. So if it was difficult for you to come up with 3, I challenge you to practice it on a daily basis until it becomes habit, until it becomes normal, that you can just list off 3 or 5 or 10 really great things about yourself. The last thing I ask you to do is think about the person that loves you the most in the world, who no matter what is going to be with you through thick and thin. Could be your mom, could be your grandpa, could be your dad, your brother, your sister, your best friend, could be anybody. But think of that person. Everybody usually has at least one person who is that person for them. And I want you to think about, if you were to look in the mirror and think something negative about yourself, if that person was looking at you at the same time, would they see that same thing? Probably not, right? They are going to love you, be friends with you, support you no matter what. So anytime you're having a bad day or a negative thought, I want you to think about that moment and think, would that person think the same thing? All right, so good luck with the assignment. If you have any questions, please email your teacher, or you can email me, jennifer.rowe@lrsd.net. And don't forget to check in with your teacher this Friday. Okay, have a great week.